Hello everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. My name is Bill Gordon with Business Advantage, and I will be our moderator today. For those of you who don't know us, Business Advantage is an international business-to-business market research, data, and sales development company, and we were formed in 1992. And one of our core specialties is in the CAD, CAM, simulation, PDM, PLM, 3D printing, and augmented reality sectors, where we have conducted over 650 projects in more than 100 countries worldwide. The topic and title of today's presentation is CAD Trends 2017. This is Business Advantage's 4th annual presentation of the survey results, where we look at 15 of the most important trends in the CAD markets worldwide. I'd like now to introduce our two speakers. First of all is Chris Turner. Chris is the founder and CEO of Business Advantage, and he's based in our headquarters in the UK, just outside of London. Chris has over 30 years of experience in the CAD, CAE, CAM, PLM, PDM markets, including extensive international experience working with all the major vendors in these spaces in Europe, in the Americas, and in Asia Pacific. And our second speaker is Nicola Mansfield. And Nicola is our Director of Market and Competitor Analysis at Business Advantage. Nicola has over 15 years of experience running CAD market research, and she has been the lead on each of these annual CAD trends studies that we have conducted. With that, I'd like to hand over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Bill. Can I add my welcome to that from Bill to everyone. Thank you for being with us today and for the investment of your time. CAD Trends has become or represents a significant body of work over the last 4 years, and we believe it has assisted literally thousands of people and many companies in their planning. As we've reviewed records over the last 4 years, we've now added up that the webinar or the slide deck has been attended or viewed or downloaded more than 15,000 times by executives from vendors in the CAD, CAM, CAE, PDM, PLM space, and executives in design and engineering companies. So we hope it proves of benefit for your planning for the forthcoming year. So just a brief overview of our program today. We're going to talk briefly about the methodology so that we understand how the study was put together. We'll then provide an overview of key trends, and then Nicola is going to go into detail on some of the trends. Not all the material will be covered in the webinar because of time, but will be available as a download. Then we're going to look at hardware, software usage, and also sources of information, the sources of information that people go to keep up to date in the CAD space, and then finally a Q&A session. So a brief introduction on the background to this research. Our aim is to assist you with future planning within the CAD space, as we believe, of course, that future planning is key for any business. This particular study was conducted using an online survey, and we gathered responses from 720 CAD users and decision makers globally. The methodology and the core of the survey have been kept consistent across the 4 waves to ensure comparability of the results. If we look briefly now at the approach to the survey, this approach is used time and time again for each of the questions. So first of all, we have 15 key trends that were identified. These are the same topics as were in 2016 and allows for year-on-year comparisons, of course. So we look at these 15 trends and we look across 4 key metrics: the level of awareness, the level of perceived importance, the level of current usage, and the level of predicted usage. And that methodology is used for each of the 15 trends that we'll talk about today. So quickly moving on to the survey audience, if we look at the left-hand side of the screen, the outer ring shows us the geographical breakdown of the sample, 720 responses. Geographically, they split pretty much evenly. America's 41% and EMEA 42%, and Asia Pacific at 17%. This represents very closely the overall universe or the total market as a whole for the CAD/CAM space. The inner circle on the left-hand side gives us information about the size of companies. 3/4 of the companies are SMEs or SMBs, and so 25% are larger companies. Larger companies here are defined as over 1,000 employees. So there are more large companies in this survey than there are in the universe as a whole. So it's overrepresented by the views of larger companies. If we move now to the right-hand side of the screen, looking at the respondents' profile on the top right-hand side, we can see that 1 in 3 of the respondents are managers. And if we add to that executive management, we find that it's almost half, or 50% of the respondents are decision makers. And with engineers and designers, we have almost 4 in 10 coming from the engineering and design field. And lastly on this slide, if we look at the sector on the bottom right-hand part of the screen, we can see that there is 2/3 of the sample come from manufacturing and AEC, and that's split pretty much evenly, 34% manufacturing, 32% AEC. In fact, respondents are drawn from 46 different industry sectors. All of the survey respondents had to be using CAD/CAM solutions themselves or in their companies to qualify to participate in the survey. So that covers the methodology, and now we're going to move into an overview of the trends themselves. Nicola, as I mentioned earlier, will then go into more detail on some of the trends. The first thing we're going to look at is a snapshot of the awareness and current usage. So we're looking at all 15 trends or technologies or services together. The red column bar shows awareness and answers the questions, which of the following are you familiar with or have heard of? The blue bar shows current usage. What does your company already use in-house at the moment? The line shows adoption. Adoption is defined as usage as a proportion of those aware of a trend. This enables us to see where awareness does and does not lead to current usage. The dotted line shows average adoption. Therefore, those trends to the left of this line, you can see in the middle of the screen, shows awareness leading to usage. For the trends on the left of this line, we see above average adoption or awareness translating into usage. For trends on the right of this line, we see that awareness is not currently translating into usage. The adoption is lower. If we just look at a couple of points on this particular screen, which I think are quite interesting, if we look at the right-hand side of the screen, we look at cloud-based CAD, which is the third from the end on the right. So 55% of the people surveyed are aware of cloud-based CAD. So that's really saying that almost 1 in 2, 45% of people are not aware or familiar with cloud-based CAD. There's obviously a great opportunity there for further education and communication. If we go back to now the middle of the screen and we look at 3D printing, we can see that in terms of awareness, it has the second highest awareness after 3D modeling, but the usage at the present time is less than half of solid modeling. So people are very aware of 3D printing, but the usage at this time, although it is growing, is still limited. So keeping with awareness, we're now going to look over the last 4 years as an historical view, if you will, or trend on awareness. So we're looking backwards over time. If we look at the chart, one thing that's immediately sticks out in terms of the change of awareness, if we go to the bottom row and the third from the end on the right-hand side, pay-as-you-go, the awareness of pay-as-you-go as a licensing model has doubled in awareness over the 4 years we've been running this survey. And it's interesting that in the recent CAD in the Cloud professional report that we've produced, 40% of those surveyed prefer a usage-based pricing model. If we now move to the bottom row, but the left-hand side for PDM, we can see that the growth from 33 to 53% in awareness over the last 4 years is an increase of nearly 2/3 in awareness in the market of PDM. And finally, a newer trend on the bottom at the far right-hand side, augmented reality. Although we've only been looking at this for the last couple of years, you can see there that there's been a 50% increase in awareness in augmented reality. So, if we move now from awareness to usage, again, we're going to look over the last 3 years and for 2017, making 4 years in total, the current usage of these technologies and services. The top 7 trends show a year-on-year increase in usage, despite perhaps somewhat more challenging political climate across some of the biggest developed economies. If we look at some of the detail on the slide, we can see, for example, with 3D printing, if this is in the top 7 trends and it's right in the middle, 3D printing. So we can see in terms of usage, this has grown from 15% in our first survey in 2014 to be 36% in 2017. So this has grown by 2.4 times over these last 3-4 surveys. If we look now at CAM, which is the second from the end on the top row, we can see that although we only have 2 years of data, that is showing an increase of 6%, 24 to 30%, or 25% increase in usage over that period. And it's interesting too, when we asked people that rated CAM as important to them, but they weren't using it, the main reason they gave for not using CAM was insufficient in-house technical expertise. If we go over to 3D modeling just briefly, which is the top usage trend on the left-hand side on the top row, we are again asked for those people that found this technology or trend important, but they weren't using it. We asked them why that was, and the key reason was compatibility with existing systems. That was the main reason, the people that felt this was important to their business but were not currently using it. And finally, if we go to cloud-based CAD, which is in the bottom set of the trends and is pretty much in the middle, slightly to the right, we can see that there's been an increase in usage over the 4 years. But again, those that found this important to their business, we asked them why they weren't currently using this. And the 2 top reasons were data security, which I think we would all understand. But the second reason was high cost, or perceived high cost of using cloud-based CAD. So if we move on, having looked at awareness and usage, we now are going to talk about importance. And this is just an overview. Nicola is going to go into far more detail on this for us. So we want to understand the level of perceived importance of each of the CAD trends for businesses at the present time. The respondents were asked to rate each of these trends in terms of their current importance to their business on a 1 to 10 scale, where 1 is not important at all and 10 is extremely important. The average or mean scores were then used to construct this matrix or pyramid showing the rank order of importance to the business. Trends with the highest mean score are showing at the top of this matrix or pyramid, indicating high importance to the business. These trends are then ranked in descending order of importance from top to bottom. The smaller numbers at the end of each line are the base sizes, and they will differ, of course, for each trend or technology or service for those that are familiar, using, or have heard of. So it's quite clear from the chart that 3D modeling, which has been the most important since we started this survey, continues to be, followed by 2D drafting, PDM, and then simulation stroke CAE. To the right of the screen, you'll see some differences on each of the importance rankings, as some of the trends are more important in particular sectors, regions, or company types. And you can see, for example, that 3D modeling, unsurprisingly perhaps, is most important in manufacturing and in larger companies. So having looked at a snapshot of importance, we're now going to look at absolute importance over time. And we were curious to see how this order may have changed year on year. Most CAD trends are stable with some gentle increase in importance over the 4 years. There are one or two trends that we'd like to just mention. If we look again at 3D printing, now that's in the bottom set of the chart and is in the middle. If you look at 3D printing there, you can see that the importance of 3D printing to respondents has grown from 3.9 out of 10 to 5.2 out of 10. So a growth of 1.3 in importance points. And that is the highest growth seen on any trend over the last 4 years. But still, it places 3D printing in the lower half of the ranking of importance. If we look briefly at cloud-based CAD, which is just along 2 slots from 3D printing on the bottom row, we can see that that has grown in importance by 0.6 of an importance point over the last 4 years. And finally, just looking at PDM, which is the third in on the top row, you can see that that has grown in importance, but only by 0.5 of a percentage point over the last 3 or 4 years. This next chart enables us to plot the usage and importance on one particular matrix. So down the left-hand side, the vertical axes, we have usage, and on the horizontal axes, we have importance. So this chart shows a correlation matrix between current usage and importance, ranking of the key trends. And we've split this into 4 quadrants. The top right-hand quadrant shows high usage and high importance. And we're calling this quadrant as the leading trends quadrant. In here, we can see quite clearly 3D modeling and 2D drafting appear stable and are leaders in that leading quadrant. But also simulation, PDM, and CAM have developed into key technologies or leading trends. If we look at the bottom right, this shows low usage but high importance, and we've currently named this as trailing trends. And the top left-hand quadrant shows high usage but currently lower importance, and we've named this as emerging trends. And 3D printing is growing in importance, as we've looked at, and Nicola will go into more detail on, and it's moving towards becoming a leading trend. And finally, the bottom left-hand quadrant shows low usage and low importance, or these are niche trends or technologies currently. So we now move to looking to the future. And on this particular graph, we wanted to look or understand the anticipated future usage for each of these CAD trends, technologies, or services. And on this chart, we've plotted the current usage of each of the CAD trends as a baseline, the anticipated additional usage in the next 12 months, and finally, the anticipated additional usage in the next 3 to 5 years. So the bigger the gap between the baseline and the predictive usage line, the bigger the opportunity for growth as perceived by the businesses around the world who participated in this survey. You can see quite clearly that the one on the left, 3D printing, is showing good growth potential, and the second one there is mobile access to CAD, and then finally cloud-based CAD. These are showing the strongest growth potential over the next 3 to 5 years of the 15 trends or technologies that we've looked at. So thank you very much. I hope it's been a useful overview for each of you. I'm now going to hand over to Nicola, who's going to go to look into more detail at some of the trends of the 15. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So having looked at the CAD trend snapshot, as Chris mentioned, we'll look a little deeper at some of the more interesting trends. We'll also highlight the importance ratings for each of those trends, as well as the rank order that Chris has mentioned. This chart shows the potential growth for each of the 15 CAD trends in the next 3 to 5 years, with the current year used as the base. And the scores are calculated as a percentage claimed uplift. You can see the calculation here. So it's the percentage claimed uplift in the next 3 to 5 years in relation to the current year, where we're using the base of the current year, 2017. As you can see, augmented reality here, followed by mobile access to CAD, cloud-based CAD, and pay-as-you-go access to CAD are showing the biggest growth potential. However, some of these trends are coming from a low base, or in other words, have a current low usage. And to explain the relationship between these two anticipated growth potential and the current actual usage, we've plotted these two data points on the following chart, which is line series, which you can see here. So again, augmented reality on the left-hand side is showing the biggest growth potential in 3 to 5 years. Yet the current claimed usage is actually quite low. On the other extreme, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see 2D drafting, which has a very high current usage, but limited future growth potential of just 4%. It's a more mature trend. And here in the center, most interesting trend, 3D printing, and this is where anticipated usage is closely related to the 3 to 5 year growth ratio. So we're going to look at some of the more interesting trends in more detail, and here we're looking at augmented reality. And just to give you some explanation about the way the data is presented, we started to track augmented reality in 2015, and the first bar here shows the usage of augmented reality at just 3%. The second bar shows the usage in 2016, and the middle bar shows current usage in 2017, and this is now currently 6% of our participants. The two grey bars on the right-hand side show predicted usage in the next 12 months and also in the next 3 to 5 years. And throughout the report, we'll identify where there are any significant differences by country, by industry sector, or by company size. In our questionnaire, we defined augmented reality in detail, but essentially we're talking about a technology that superimposes a computer-generated image on a user's view of the real world, thus providing a composite view. At the moment, as I said, there are very few people in our survey that are actually using augmented reality, and it's about 6%. And the ratings of its importance in the industry overall is currently quite low at 4.8 out of a possible rating scale of 1 to 10. But when we ask about future usage, potential growth rates are high. So in 3 to 5 years, our survey findings suggest that 14% of users will be using some form of augmented reality, representing a growth rate of 133%. So we're predicting that by 2018, 10% of our survey respondents will actually be using some form of augmented reality. Growth over the last 2 years has been continuous, but it has been a little slower than we'd originally anticipated. In 2015, for example, we predicted a 67% increase. In reality, it turned out to be 66%, so we were very close. And actually, this is the same prediction for the next 12 months, so we feel fairly confident about this. From the data, we can see that it's the EMEA region and the larger companies that are likely to be driving usage in the next 12 months. And the industry that we've labelled as other, in other words, not manufacturing and not AEC, they're more likely to be adopting augmented reality in the next 12 months. Interestingly, it's the Americas, the other sectors and the larger companies that are driving the potential usage in 3 to 5 years. So it does seem that the Americas see the potential for augmented reality, but perhaps are a little more hesitant and resistant than the EMEA region. The next trend is mobile access to CAD, and essentially this is accessing CAD solutions on the move. So we're using laptops, tablets, and mobile or cell phones. And similar to augmented reality, current usage is low. It's about 13% in 2017, as is importance, which is currently scoring at 5.4 out of 10. What's interesting is that we're seeing a decline from 2015 to 2017. In 2015, 22% of respondents were apparently using some form of mobile application, and this year it's reduced down to about 13%. And from a number of projects that we've conducted in-house at Business Advantage over the past year, we've gathered information to suggest that there are still some problems accessing CAD solutions, either on the go or in the field, and that's particularly in the AEC sector. These problems are typically related to connectivity in the field or speed or efficiency of the hardware. But in spite of this recent decline, predictions of the future are still for growth at 131% over the next 3 to 5 years. All the industry groups, AEC, manufacturing, and what we've called other, are likely to drive the increase in usage in the next 12 months, and we estimate growth there to be about 77%. And our data suggests that the Americas region and the manufacturing sector in particular are likely to drive the predicted increase in the next 3 to 5 years, so the longer term. Adoption of cloud-based applications has increased steadily over the past 4 years, and currently 12% of our survey respondents are using cloud-based CAD applications. We actually had anticipated that the growth rate would be higher based on previous surveys, but again, future predictions of growth are high at about 58% in 1 year and 125% over the next 3 to 5 years. We have come across major concerns which come up regularly in surveys about cloud-based applications, and these typically relate to data security and privacy, both inside the respondent's country and also outside their country. Our data shows that the manufacturing sector is likely to drive the increase in usage in the next 12 months, but it's the Americas that suggest greater growth over 3 to 5 years. Larger companies are also more likely to adopt cloud solutions in the next 3 to 5 years. We've recently run a separate study on CAD in the cloud, and have published a detailed report in conjunction with John Penny Research. And in that study, it was the APAC region which seemed most disposed towards the adoption of cloud-based solutions. In both that survey and this current CAD trend survey, we found similarities in the perceived benefits of cloud-based solutions. And the things that are coming up are higher mobility, about 65% mentioned that, ease of updating software, it was about a third, 36%, cost reductions, again about a third, increased storage capacity, improved scalability, and access to an agile and adaptive infrastructure. In terms of vendors, Autodesk is currently front of mind with respondents when thinking about CAD in the cloud applications. But notably, Onshape, a relatively new entry into the market, is making headway, with 25% of respondents from our survey mentioning the Onshape cloud-based solution. This was followed by Dassault at about 10%. Next, we move on to concurrent engineering. This had an importance rating of 6 out of the top 15. And we defined concurrent engineering as multiple users working on a single model in real time. And 17% of participants are currently involved in concurrent engineering, and we anticipate a growth rate of 29% in the next 12 months. Looking further ahead, we're estimating 59% in 3 to 5 years. The Americas region and the other industry sectors, i.e. not manufacturing or AEC, are also more likely to drive this increase. And over the 3 to 5 year period, the increase is most likely to come from the manufacturing sector and other sectors. Related to concurrent engineering is the need to collaborate, and we also asked about collaboration tools as part of the survey. And we found yet again, similar to previous years, that a significant majority, 64%, of participants of the survey are either not aware of or are not using any form of collaboration tools at the present time. We've said this in previous years, but it still seems to be the case that there's a need to educate the market on collaboration tools and also the benefits of concurrent engineering. The next trend is quite interesting, 3D printing. And the score for importance of 3D printing, as Chris mentioned, although still low, has increased in 2017. And it's now coming in at 5.2 out of a possible rating of 10, compared to 4.5 in 2016 and 15. So there's a clear growth trend, and in 12 months, our data suggests that 44% of respondents will be using or planning to use 3D printing. So it's definitely an area of opportunity for vendors. And over the next 3 to 5 years, we're expecting over half, 53% of respondents, to be either using or planning to use some form of 3D printing. At this time, usage of 3D printing is higher in the EMEA region amongst manufacturing companies and also across the larger companies. If we look at the different industry groups, regions and company size, they all appear to be driving the predicted increase over the next 12 months. Over a longer period of time, so 3 to 5 years, is the AEC sector and the smaller companies that we think will drive the predicted increase. As with last year, the recognition of brands is still quite limited, with almost half of respondents, about 48%, unable to name the brand that they currently use. 1 in 5 or 20% are using Stratasys, and this is actually a slight reduction since 2016. But Stratasys is strongest in manufacturing and in the Americas region. 1 in 7 or 14% use 3D Systems and MakerBot. Interestingly, both 3D Systems and MakerBot are actually stronger in sectors other than AEC and manufacturing. From a number of studies conducted in this space, we know that brand recognition remains low, so there's definitely an opportunity to build market share for 3D printer vendors here. There are clear perceived benefits of 3D printing, and the sort of mentions that come up include design improvement, that's about 63%, saving on design time, over half, 56%, and costs, and faster response time to market. Product lifecycle management has an above average importance rating at 6.7 out of 10. And over the past few years, usage has been relatively stable. But in the next 12 months, growth is anticipated at about 19%, which will mean about 1/3 of our respondents are using or planning to use PLM. And future growth is likely to be across all geographic regions. As expected, we see the greatest usage of PLM in manufacturing, it's about 30%, and amongst the largest companies, about 41%. But interestingly, the short-term growth in 12 months is likely to come from medium-sized companies, and in that longer period of 3 to 5 years, it's the smaller medium companies that are likely to be the cause of that growth. We're seeing an increasing focus of PLM vendors on those smaller manufacturing organizations, and our data does suggest that there is opportunity in this space. Siemens Teamcenter and PTC Windchill continue to be the main products used. Teamcenter is about 21%, PTC about 17%, although around 20% of our respondents don't know what they use or what they plan to use in the future. The benefits of PLM are perceived to be savings on design time, that's just over half, 55%, design improvements, cost savings, and this is particularly important and relevant to the APAC region, where 60% of respondents are currently using or planning to use PLM, and they're identifying cost savings as a key benefit in this region. We also asked a question, thinking about PLM users who do not have an engineering background, to what extent do you think they find doing graphic intensive work from the PLM to be user-friendly? Only 1/3 of respondents find PLM solutions to be extremely or very friendly. Clearly, PLM solutions are highly complex, and over many projects that we've conducted in-house, ease of use is a concern or an issue. So when addressing these small and medium companies in the future, this will become of greater importance, and definitely an area where vendors need to address and focus on. Building information modeling is an interesting trend. And over the last couple of years, we've seen a dip in reported usage in 2017, and that dip has actually increased in 2017, which we have found somewhat surprising. You've already seen from a previous slide shown by Chris that awareness of BIM has actually declined from 46% to 38% this year. The importance rating has increased a little, and there remains growth opportunity in the future. We're suggesting 31% in the next 3 to 5 years. And it's AEC and small companies that are likely to drive the suggested increase over the next 12 months. But Over the long term, all company sizes and geographic regions are equally likely to drive the modest increase over the 3 to 5 year period. In many projects we've conducted in the BIM space, we found a big difference between countries. In some countries, such as the UK, the government has regulated BIM usage on government projects, and they've also set targets for the AEC sector for BIM implementation. But in other regions, the appetite for BIM and its implementation has been very limited. Growth to date has been predominantly in the UK, Ireland, USA and Australia in both awareness and usage. There's a lot of opportunity outside of these geographic regions, but we feel that vendors will need to work hard to build both awareness and adoption. Over the past 2 years, we've also seen adoption of BIM more so in the construction sector, and that's primarily in commercial construction and specifically amongst very large projects. In residential construction companies, we still find a lot of resistance to BIM and change generally, I would say. And in recent years, we've seen increasing focus from vendors on educating the market about BIM. There remains a lot of work to do within the smaller companies and some segments of that construction sector. Product data management has good levels of usage, and about 1/3 of our respondents are currently using PDM. The importance rating is also relatively high at 7.4 out of 10. And there's significantly high usage of PDM both in the Americas and the EMEA region and amongst the manufacturing sector, specifically the larger companies. And predictions for future growth are modest at 15% in the next 12 months and 27% in the longer term of 3 to 5 years. It's the other industry sectors, i.e. not manufacturing or AEC, that's likely to drive the increase in usage in the short term in 12 months. But all company sizes, industry sectors and regions are equally likely to drive the increase over 3 to 5 years. Next, we move to CAM, and we only included CAM in the study in the past 2 years, but we have seen an increase in usage from 24% to 30%. From the data, we predict modest growth of about 10% in the next 12 months and 20% in the next 3 to 5 years. All the sectors and groups are equally likely to drive the increased usage in the next 12 months. And that's especially this other sector, i.e. not AEC and manufacturing. And all groups are equally likely to drive the increase over the 3 to 5 year period. In terms of the solutions that are being used, there's a wide variety, but about 1/3, about 30%, are using Mastercam. They're particularly strong in the US market, and 17% are using Siemens NX. Interestingly, 9% are using CAM for Fusion 360. Next, we move on to simulation, or CAE. And here, simulation is defined as the use of a CAD model during the design process to predict real-world behavior performance of that design, usually with CAE software. And we see good levels of usage at 42%, and also a relatively high importance score of 7.1 out of a possible 10. We do see some potential for future growth. It's predicted to be 17% in the next 3 to 5 years. And manufacturing across all regions and small and medium companies are likely to drive the modest increase in usage over the next 12 months. EMEA is most likely to drive this increased usage over the next 3 to 5 years. The benefits of simulation are seen mostly for design optimization, prediction of product performance, and validation of design decisions. And that's based on those using or planning to use simulation. We also asked a question about changes in usage of CAE in simulation over the past year, and increases in usage were actually reported more in the APAC region, but also to a lesser extent in the Americas region. We also asked how companies plan to use simulation and CAE in the design process. And interesting, it's those small companies that are significantly more likely to be using simulation to predict product performance. It's the larger companies that are planning to create, for example, finite element models and meshing, and using computational fluid dynamics simulation. When asked what would be needed to change me to start using simulation and CAE software or use it more frequently, 45% of respondents mentioned making the software easier to use, particularly for less experienced designers, and 35% mentioned reducing the cost of the software by at least a half. So clearly it's very expensive and still difficult to use. So there is a need for support, is clearly required. And we also asked, would you be willing to pay for expert support to guide your use of simulation software? and 41% of those respondents expected support to be included in the cost of the software, but interestingly, 49% overall were willing to make some form of additional payment for support. Of that, 23% would be willing to pay, would prefer software and support costs to be charged separately from the original software cost. Moving on, 3D modelling. Current usage of 3D modelling is very high, 78%. Importance is the highest rated of all the trends at 8.6 out of 10. There's high current usage in the manufacturing sector, about 81%, and significantly lower usage in the AEC, about 60%. Significantly lower current usage in the APAC region than in EMEA or the Americas. And it's larger companies that are more likely to be current users, although 6 in 10 small and medium companies are also using 3D modelling. Future predicted growth potential is very limited due to the already very high current usage. And in the next 12 months, we're expecting about a 6% growth rate. Over 3 to 5 years, we're predicting 9%. And it's industries other than manufacturing or AC that are likely to drive that increase in the future. Next, we move on to 2D drafting. And this continues to be rated very highly in terms of importance, at 8.0 out of 10. Just over 2/3, 72% of our respondents continue to use 2D drafting, but there is some very limited growth potential, about 3% in the next 12 months, and 4% in 3 to 5 years. On average, about a third, 37% of design work produces 2D drawings, which shows a slight decline from last year, and about 35%, just over a third, use both 2D and 3D. Those only using 3D represents about 28%, which is a slight increase from last year. 3/4 of our respondents still feel that 2D drawing automatically generated from 3D CAD or BIM to be very important to their business, and a similar proportion, 77%, feel that the same or more effort should be put into improving 2D drafting capabilities by CAD software suppliers. So it's clearly demonstrating the continued importance of 2D in a 3D CAD world. I'm now going to hand back over to Chris, who will talk more about software and hardware usage.
Thank you very much, Nicola. So we're going to look now at use of CAD packages, individual packages. And if we can, we asked people here the top 10 most used CAD packages. And you can see this rank order, AutoCAD in number 1 position at 37%. The segments or groups that are driving usage of these tools are shown to the right-hand side of the figures. So Autodesk as a company has a number of the leading solutions in the CAD space, as you'd expect. 30% of users are using Dassault solutions, both CATIA and SolidWorks. And as one would expect, they are very strong in the manufacturing sector. PTC, Siemens, and Bentley have about 1 in 10, and PTC and Siemens are doing better, and Bentley are all doing better in larger companies. So of the 702 respondents, AutoCAD continues to lead the list of the top 10 most used packages. When we turn to the proportion of time that people spend on their software, we found that AutoCAD is used by, the users use AutoCAD 43% of time, while for CATIA and SolidWorks, it's used 52% of the time. So the more sophisticated the tools are actually used more intensively by their users. We now move from software, CAD software packages to collaboration software tools. And this is, we see some minor year-on-year fluctuations in the rankings. You can see here on the chart, we've put the 2017 rankings first and the 2016 rankings. You can see the Autodesk A360 moving to the top usage, Navisworks moving up slightly, and Bentley project-wise moving up as well. What's also other mentions, Aconex was mentioned, which is a collaboration tool for the construction space, Integrity, which is a collaboration tool for software development from PTC, and Documentum or OpenText, an enterprise content management system for all information assets. To the right of the screen, there's, again, as Nicola has mentioned, just to summarize here, about 2/3 of participants are either not aware or are not using any collaboration tools at this present time. So there's a great opportunity there to show people the benefits of collaboration tools. Now, quickly, we're going to move on to hardware usage. And this summarizes things very well for the last 4 years. We see generally stable across the different types of hardware. The future, though, the trend is quite clear that people are moving away from desktop workstations or PCs and moving towards virtual CAD workstations, tablets, mobile phone, and more mobile usage. Interestingly, this trend, this change to less fixed and more mobile has been shown in each of the years, but although it is planned, it is happening slower than users have predicted previously. We're now going to touch on popular sources of information on the CAD industry. So we asked people about what sources of information do you use to keep up to date with regards to the latest development in the CAD industry. And you can see here that the leading source of information is social media. And although this category the definition has changed very slightly, it has shown significant growth over the last year. The top 5 sources: social media, search engines, websites, industry magazines and journals, and webinars, account for 40% usage by the respondents from the survey, all of which are digital except industry magazines and journals. 61% of those surveyed use 4 or more sources, and only 8% of respondents use just one source. 87% of our survey respondents use at least one digital channel. So digital channels or non-digital or traditional channels, a slight comparison, and 69% use at least one non-digital or traditional channel. And this whole area is one that we can go into a lot more detail on, but just very quickly, the social media in focus. So 45% using social media. We asked them to break down, the respondents to break down what they're currently using. These percentages are all based on the total sample. And you can see here that YouTube and LinkedIn are the top 2 social media platforms for designers, engineers, and their managers when seeking information about developments in the CAD/CAM industry. So we have gone through things fairly quickly, but this concludes this part of the presentation. I'd like to now hand back to Bill.
Great, thank you, Chris. We're about to open up for Q&A now, so if you would, please enter your questions in the chat window on the side or top of your screen. And I also wanted to thank everybody who submitted questions ahead of time over the past few days. We had a lot of questions come in, and we've had quite a few come up during today's session. We are likely to run out of time to get to everyone's question live today, but it's still worth putting your question in, and we will follow up with you personally if we don't get it to you live. But before I open up for Q&A, I wanted to mention just 2 things to you. And first of all, just a reminder to please take a minute or 2 before you sign off today to let us know what you thought about today's webinar. We really do review each of those comments and take them seriously. And secondly, and Nicola, if you could advance the screen, I wanted to share with you that we're doing something new with this survey this year, in that in past years following our survey presentations, we always receive a number of inquiries asking if we can analyze the data to answer specific detailed questions from vendors. And mostly those fall into two categories of industry groups, one looking at AEC and the other questions looking at manufacturing. So this year, in order to address more of those questions, we've developed two professional level reports, one for AEC and one for manufacturing. And these are paid reports, but that show the analysis of the survey results for each of those industries, AEC and manufacturing, in much greater detail than we can go into today. And those will be available over the next week or two. So if you're interested at all, you can look under the on our website under the Purchase Reports tab, and those reports are at $2,000 US each. And then the next slide, before we open for Q&A, is one other area that we've received a lot of questions about has been CAD use in the cloud. And for those of you that are specifically interested in the cloud market, we've developed a professional report in collaboration with John Petty Research, focusing on CAD in the cloud. And you can also find more information about that on our website under that Purchase Reports tab. So thank you. Now I'd like to move into the Q&A session. One of the questions that came up a couple times live today was, will we be sharing these slides? And wanted to let you know that we will be. We'll be sending out a link so that you can view and download the slides shown today. And there were a few slides that we had to hide in the interest of time that will also be included in that in the version that you'll be able to download. One question another question came up just now was within, and Nicola and Chris, so within AEC, do we include process plant utilities or EPC companies within process plant and utilities?
No, they would be included in what we've termed as other. So we've got about 10% of respondents from process and plant, and they are within the other category, not AEC.
Great, thanks, Nicola. Let's see. Another one was, which CAD trends have you seen pick up the most steam over the last 3 to 5 years? And then there was a second one, which trends have you seen lose the most momentum over the past couple of years?
Okay, so perhaps I can take the first one, and I think Nicola's going to cover the second one for us. So, yeah, one of the trends that has developed the most over the past 3 to 5 years, if we have usage as a measure, is 3D printing. Just 15% of respondents were using 3D printing in 2014, while in 2017 that has grown to 36% of respondents. So 2.4 times the proportion in 2014. This is also reflected in the importance respondents give to 3D printing. This was rated 3.9 in 2014 and 5.2 in 2017. So an increase of 1.3 importance points out of 10. So while the importance rating is still in the lower half of all the trends, 3D printing is definitely an emerging trend, and over the next 2 or 3 years, we expect it will migrate to be one of the leading trends. It has grown more in importance for users than any other trend, technology, or service over the last 4 years.
Okay, I can take the second one. So the CAD trends that have lost some momentum over the last couple of years, I think BIM is probably the most surprising one, where we've seen a dip in awareness. I think it was 46%, reduced down to 38% this year. So reduction over the past 2 years. And I think I mentioned earlier that there's definitely variation by geography and by country. And in some countries, the UK, Ireland, I think USA and Australia, they're continuing to grow. In the UK, that's largely because of government regulations. But certainly our survey identified clear benefits of BIM. There seems interest in BIM, things like design improvement, cost savings. But I think it's the smaller companies in several other studies that we've conducted that report difficulties with implementation and also the excessive cost associated with BIM. And they really couldn't justify the cost of implementing just by the later project savings. And I think also mentioned earlier, we've seen some increased adoption of BIM amongst construction companies, not just architects and engineers. But these tend to be the very largest companies involved in sort of construction of large commercial build projects. And so it's the smaller companies that where we're really seeing possibly a decline of interest because of the experience they've had with looking into it and the costs associated.
Perfect. Thanks, Nicola. And getting a little short on time here, but wanted to ask this one. I think it'd be of interest to everybody. What were the users, and specifically not the vendors or distributors, preferences, if we have any data on this, between perpetual licenses and a subscription model? And are there any opinions or differences amongst the size of enterprise, big enterprises versus medium or small enterprises?
Okay, I can take that one. So within this particular study, we didn't actually ask about license preference. So from this study, we don't have available data by different sizes of organization. It's something that we could look into further if anyone's interested. But we do know from several other research projects that generally users are saying they have a strong preference for perpetual licenses with an annual maintenance. Several projects have suggested that actually the larger organizations are more open to subscription, and that the smaller companies and particularly the one-man bands are more open to more of the time-based licenses, either for 1 or 3 months, for example. But overall, preference is definitely perpetual license with annual maintenance.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. Okay, we're just about at top of the hour. There are several questions here, both that came in over the past few days and that you've asked right now live, that I apologize. We're not going to be able to get to live today, but we will follow up with you on each of those. We don't have answers on all of them. Some of them are outside of the scope of this survey, but there are things that we can look into, but we will come back to you on each of those. So with that, we will send out a link to the recording as soon as that is posted, and we'll also send out a link for you to download the presentation. And with that, I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of us at Business Advantage for joining us today and for your active participation. Thanks very much. Bye-bye now.